Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of the Mental Corner podcast, the show where I bring on guests from all different backgrounds to talk all the things mental health. I'm, of course, your host, Harry Potvin, and today I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Quincy Brozo. Quincy is a mental health advocate for Jack.org and a recently retired USports qualifying varsity swimmer for the UBC Thunderbirds swim team. I met Quincy when we both went to a Jack.org national summit, and let me tell you, her energy just blows right through the screen. She's just such a ray of sunshine and so easy to talk to. So you're really going to enjoy this episode, especially if you're a swimmer, because we dive into the mental health aspect of swimming, the team, outside of swimming, the pressure, all of it. We dive into all of it. So I really want to thank Quincy again for coming on and having this awesome discussion with me. Now, before we get into the episode today, guys, you know the drill. If you're listening, please like, comment, share, subscribe, give 5 stars if you're on that podcast platform. Share with someone who might want to hear this episode. It's a really great one, and I can't wait for you to listen. I'll talk to y'all very soon. Have a great rest of your day. Peace. All right, we are good to go. Quincy, what's going on? Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So the first question I wanted to ask you, what got you started in swimming? Like, what was the push into that specific sport?
It was a push exactly like that. My parents pushed me in the water one day and they're like, you need to learn how to swim. I was something like maybe 4 or 5 years old. And I went into, your classic learn to swim. And at first I hated it.
Mm-hmm.
Did not like the idea of being underwater or like having to deal with water in any way. So yeah, I think that's one of the main reasons why they put me into it. Was because they're like, this girl can't take a bath. Like, we need to teach her how to swim or something. So yeah, that's how it started. And I honestly just fell in love with it. Like, I got good. I think that was the biggest thing, right?
Right.
So yeah, I got good and they put me into a team. And just from there, I just loved the sport.
Right on. Were you with Milton the whole time, or did you start somewhere else?
Yeah, Milton Marlins. They started us off with like mini Marlins, which is kind of a cute name. And I was in there for like 6 months or something. And all the coaches were like, oh, you should get this girl like into actual competitive swimming. So
Right.
yeah, that's how I moved in.
Right on. And now you said you loved it the whole time. Was there ever a time, let's say in high school, I guess, where your relationship with swimming was in question ever? Because for me personally, like, I loved swimming at the beginning. I loved it. Like, I was a diehard fan. And then once I hit around grade 11, I was like, I could go without this. And then I had to find my way back into the love with it. Was there ever a point like that for you?
Many times.
Mm.
Definitely, yeah. I actually experienced that like right at the beginning of high school. So, after grade 8, I was like starting to become like my own person, finding my own friends and stuff. And I actually ended up going to school in Oakville. So it's about 20 minutes away from where I lived. And that's just because they had a different program there and all that stuff. And so I was going into school not knowing anybody.
Mm.
And on top of that, I was having a full, high school workload and having to swim X amount of times a week, like 10, something crazy, like 10 or 11 times a week at that point.
Yeah.
And I'm 13 years old, right? And I was just like, is this worth it? I don't have any friends in school. All my friends are in swimming, which was great. I love my friends in swimming, but it was definitely a point many times throughout high school, definitely, where I was like, I should be doing more school stuff, or I should be doing more clubs and making friends outside of swimming. And even though swimming was something I was really comfortable with, and something I knew really well and I excelled in, there's a lot of times where I was like, I don't want to wake up at 6 a.m. to go into this cold water. Just, that whole play with, is it worth it or not?
Yeah, like in high school when your friends would go party and you're like, oh, I have a swim meet this weekend.
Yeah.
I shouldn't. It's like, is this worth it really? And then you add time at the swim meet and you're like, well, it wasn't worth it.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Oh my goodness. Now, what got you through those periods of questioning?
I think, I mean, ultimately, my parents were my biggest motivators when it came to swimming because they saw how much joy it gave me ultimately.
Hmm.
And they saw that I was really passionate about something. And I was constantly reminded that, you don't have to do this if you don't want to. They were actually really great at giving me full freedom and autonomy with the choice of going to swimming. But they also said, on the other hand, when you do think about if you want it or not, think about why. And most of the time, it was because, I go into the water and I'm happy in the water. And I come out, and even though it's a really hard practice or I had a really bad day that day, as soon as I was in the water and as soon as I started swimming, it like I was in my own space, and it gave me kind of a type of peace that was really different with anything else that I've experienced. So I think coming back to, the why of it, and why am I here? Why do I want to be here? It kept me grounded in those times of, you know, is it worth it?
Yeah, finding that why in high school, that's you're like a step ahead of the game there because a lot of people don't find that until the end and they're like, "Oh, that's my why."
Yeah, exactly.
Man.
But don't get me wrong, it was really tough for me, especially at my final year of high school when I was everyone's kind of faced with that, like, are you going to keep going after you
Hmm.
graduate? I'm going into another school. I'm starting to build what I might think is my career. Um, so that was definitely a hard time for me figuring out the why and should I stay in it?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Now, was it always UBC for you? Like the
Always.
choice? Always, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And honestly, it wasn't even for the swimming, funnily enough. It was, the West Coast. I had a couple of people that I knew who had moved out there and heard nothing but great things about living out west. So UBC was always in my mind because it was one of the top exercise programs, actually.
Hmm.
Um, so that's what I wanted to do. And on top of that, they were at the time like one of the top swim programs as well. So I was like, oh, well, maybe I could do both?
Right.
Yeah.
Was how, how do you go through a recruiting process with UBC? Because for the Ontario schools and everything, you go for a weekend, you swim with them, you meet the team, you do these things. How did you do that when you were in Milton for UBC? Did you fly over?
Um, yes and no. They actually had um, a swim meet going on at the time, the Melzajac Invitational.
Hmm.
And so I flew out there for the swim meet. And as I was out there, I was like in grade 11 or beginning of grade 12 or something. And I contacted the coach and I said, hey, I'm coming up for your swim meet. I'd love to chat. And initially they said no.
Ah,
Initially they were like, we had to look at your times, like maybe not.
tough.
Yeah, I know. And so I was just kind of like, blow to the chest there.
Yep.
um, but I kept pushing, and we went out to the swim meet, and I was like, hey, like I really just want to come visit the school. And they said, you know what? Okay, we'll have a meeting with you. And ended up having like a really brief meeting. Met one of the swimmers there. And then that's when they put me through the whole recruiting process of inviting me out for like a recruiting trip and staying for a couple of days and all that stuff. And that happened about a year later. So I kept in touch with everyone for about 8 or 9 months.
Mm. And was that recruiting process once you were done? You were like, yeah, this is it. This is the school.
Yeah, definitely. I honestly, like, I thought of that when I visited it for the first time. I was just walking around with my parents, in between sessions of the swim meet. And I was looking around and I was like, oh, people live here. This is so cool. um, and yeah, as soon as I met the team, honestly, everyone was like, had such great energy and the same mindset around swimming in school. Uh, so yeah, they were all just really welcoming. And definitely, I think the first time it was like, for myself, I thought it was a really good place for me. And then the second time, I thought the team was a really good place for me.
Yeah, right on.
Mhm.
Now going into a program like that, like you mentioned, they were top of the game. I think because when did you go to school? Like your first year, was it 2016? Are we the same year? Or
We are. I took a gap year though. So I think my first year, 18, 19, 20, 21. Wait, yeah, 2016. Yeah.
2016, right. So I think it was the 2013-14 season. The women's team at UBC, they won by the largest margin in USports history or something. And then they won like three other titles before we even got to school. So going into a program that's highly prestigious such as that one, like was there any added pressure for you in terms of getting into that swim program?
Oh, 100%. Definitely. Especially coming from such a small club. I was at I would say like the top of my club in terms of the women's side. And I definitely had an ego going in. Like, let's
Hmm.
be clear. I was like, oh, I've been to my nationals, all that stuff. But when the coach first told me, your times aren't good enough to get into UBC, let's put it off for a little bit. I was kind of like, oh, okay, brought down a notch. I thought I was good enough, but so getting in, kind of having to beg a little bit, and saying like, I have potential, like here's what I can bring to the table. That was definitely a different perspective I was given
Mm.
in terms of where I stood. So going into my first year, there was a lot of pressure, not just swimming wise, but also I was going in on a scholarship. So I actually had to keep like a 75% average or something, which is really hard
Yes.
for a first year student.
Very.
Yeah. So there was academic stress, there was the swimming stress, and I was the shortest girl on the team by 3 inches.
Three?
Yeah. I'm not a tall person. I'm 5'2". So like 5'5", that is the next person after me. So I was coming in not just like below everyone time wise, but like below everyone height wise.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that just
So
adds
yeah,
a
definitely.
layer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, now how many first years came in with you?
We had the biggest rookie class. I think it was like in 8 or 9 years. There was 10 of us.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
And so yeah, we had something similar. Well, I think it was just our year because it was like the 4-year cycle or something. It was the year of right after Rio Olympics. So I think there
Yeah.
was just a big group of people, but we had 15 guys try out for the team in our first year. So I think you can kind of relate to it. Like, did you feel that level of competition or that level of like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's like I'm making it. I have to make it, but there's so many people here who are thinking the exact same thing. Like, did you ever feel that kind of pressure when you were trying out?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So the trying out process is actually in the recruiting camp that they send you to.
Oh, okay.
So it's not like in the September, it's usually in about like May, June.
Mm-hmm.
So they fly, well, they don't fly. You pay for your own
Right.
ticket, but they have a bunch of people from like all over Canada come in and they spend the weekend in the dorm rooms. They have, four practices of different types of practices, and you're in there with your competition basically,
Mm-hmm.
of getting into the spots. And one thing about UBC is they don't over recruit, so you can only take 18 kids to USports, so they only recruit ever 18. Sometimes it's less.
Right.
So there's only 18 spots, and I think I went in and there was like 15 girls. Yeah. And it was the second recruit trip. So they had already had
Wow.
one with another 10, 12 girls. Yeah. So it was pretty intense. And I'm looking around and I was like, oh, they have like 6 vets. So not all of us are getting in. So just seeing my competition around me, it was, again, me coming from a small club, I had like 2 people a lane usually. And in this, it was like 6 people a lane. So it was definitely a lot of pressure.
Right. I was going to say that it's kind of a culture shock because I came from Whitby, which is, I think,
Oh,
just as
no way.
small as Milton. Yeah, just as small as Milton, I think. But when I got to Guelph, I was also, I'm seeing a lot of similarities here, but I think I was the second shortest guy. And I was like one of the tallest in Whitby. And I was like, what the hell? Like, you guys are,
Yeah.
what are you guys eating?
Yeah.
Why are you
You
so
get there
tall?
and they're grown men.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
like, whoa.
You're like, whoa, you're an adult.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now how did you find navigating first year, because you had the swim team obviously, and then like we just mentioned the culture shock, but also like an increase in training, an increase in volume, and then you also on the academic side had the exact same thing. How did you personally find a balance between both, and a social life for that matter? I forgot that was a thing.
Hmm. Um, I mean, yeah, like you said, the biggest thing I think was the culture. Also moving halfway across the country.
Right.
Um, and it was really hard. I'm not going to lie. For the first like 3 or 4 months, I was really struggling in terms of being really homesick. I didn't think that was going to hit me that early. I think it was probably in the third or fourth week. I was like, whoa,
Mm,
my parents are in a different time zone. I can't just call them in the middle of the night because it would be literally in the middle of the night for them. Um, so that was a big thing. Also, I was tired all the time with swimming and the swimming load and uh, studying and all that stuff. So for the first, I'd say at least until November, I was exhausted
right.
all the time, and I couldn't keep up, and it got to a point where I had to speak to our sports psychologist, and I said, hey, listen, like I really want to be here and I'm really enjoying myself, but it's really hard to stay kind of on top of everything. And one thing she told me, which like kind of just sticks to me until this day, is you don't have to be great at everything you do.
Mm.
And I was just like, are you sure?
Yeah. What?
Like, look where I am, like one of the top schools in the country academically and in swimming. Like, I think I kind of have to be great at everything I do at this point. um but we worked on that, and uh to really stay on top of everything, I kind of was like, today this is my small goal I'm going to hit in swimming. I'm not going to be breaking my best times every single time I step in the water, but um today I'm going to do 5 kicks off of every wall, and that's going to be enough for me. Or I'm going to spend an hour studying on this one topic, and that's going to be enough for me today. And just kind of picking away at what I could handle at that time really helped out.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever experience like while you were going through this, like the baby steps and everything, did you ever experience like imposter syndrome in terms of like why'd they pick me to be on the team?
Harry, I experience imposter syndrome every day of my life. Yes, definitely. Especially when it was nearing championship meets, because the girls that I was swimming with like were really, really good. They all came in like had already all had times for USports, and like probably times that they would medal with.
Mm,
And that was just coming in. And I think I was like a second away on USports cuts for a lot of my time. So it was really difficult seeing that. And our coach at the time had kind of made a rule, and he said, if you're going to stay on this team by Can West, which is our conference championships,
yeah.
you have to have all of your USports cuts. And so I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, that was really hard. And I mean, I ended up getting it at Can West. I
Hmm.
actually broke a couple of records at Can West, which was also
Okay.
like really crazy for me. And I think like the biggest thing was that everyone told me was, it's the training. You're coming from a smaller club, and now you're surrounded by girls who are all in the same mindset and passion for swimming as you are. And um, definitely, I think having the team around me helped a lot. It was more of a motivator than kind of being shut down, because um, everyone was so part of a team. You know, you were never feeling alone at one point. I think that's where imposter syndrome comes in a lot of the time, is because you think, oh, I'm really alone in this. Whereas being a part of the team and talking to the girls and knowing that people actually were in the same boat as me coming in too.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, the third and fourth year girls were like, you know, I didn't have my USports cut until Ken West also. So like that's okay. That helped definitely with the imposter syndrome.
Right. Yeah, that's one thing, and I put it in one of the notes that I sent you for this episode. Is like when people hear swimming, they think individual sport. They think you're on your own. Like most of the time, you're just in your own head. But the team aspect is so important, especially university. Like you just mentioned, if you didn't have vets that looked down and were like, "Hey, man, I went through the dumps too." Like, could you imagine? Like
I
if
know.
it's so hard to think about with what it would be like with a lack of guidance in that kind of area, or just the family aspect of everything, especially in your case where you were so far away from home.
Definitely. And going back on your other point too about like socially, how did I adjust
Mm,
to my circle was the swimmers. And before in high school, I thought, you know, that shouldn't be your only group of friends. But honestly, I needed that to be my group of friends at that moment, because it was a group of people that were going through the same things that I was doing. They understood my schedule. They understood like my mindset at the time. You know, a lot of people don't understand why we wake up at 5 a.m. to jump into a cold pool, you know, like, and I felt like I didn't have to explain myself all the time around my teammates.
mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, it was still dangerous, but like, it's like more of it's less of we've all been through this, like
Mm,
get through it, and more like we all can help you get through this because we know where you've been kind of
right.
idea.
Right. Yeah. It's funny, right? Because I don't know if you had a roommate in first year, but I did, and he would come in to go to bed the same time that I would be leaving for practice. And it just my whole floor would be wide awake when I woke up. It was weird because you could never relate to them because they were like, "Oh, we're gonna play Rock Band until 3 a.m." Like, no, I gotta go to bed, man. I gotta train.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when it came to partying, you know,
Mm.
everyone's always like, oh, first year, it's like the party year. You have to like go to all these big parties and all that stuff. But I was like, I have practice tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
I can't party. Um, but then that's the other thing with the swim, excuse me, that's the other thing with the swim team, is that they all have the same schedule as you. So parties still happened,
Hmm.
which was nice. And um, ultimately, it was like the people you're around the most are the ones you're going to click with the most, right? And you all have one thing in common, which is swimming. And then from there is just like thousands of things in common. Um, so yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. I had a roommate, but she was actually on the sim team, so
Oh,
um,
nice.
I was pretty lucky on that front.
Yeah, nice. Now, what was your experience at your first? Let's go Can West first. What was
Mhm.
your first walk us through like your thoughts going in, the pressure you felt, the team aspect, the energy. Well, what
Mhm.
was it like?
Um, well, I'll start actually a week beforehand.
Hmm.
Um, we do some really great uh like team bonding and like, you know, rituals, all that stuff beforehand. So going into Can West, it really felt like a big team event. And that's one thing I never really felt before going into a summit, because we didn't have any like team championships really, because as a swimmer you go in and you're trying to get your own cut. It's very individual,
Hmm.
especially coming from a small team. You don't have a lot of relays too. So that was a big thing that I was nervous about, because I was like, well, I've never swam for a team really. It's always been for myself. But the team is really good at prepping us for that, and being like, you know, we're all going into this together. So that was really great. Um, but I have to tell you, the first session, I think I completely blacked out. I was so I was so excited, but also like really in my head about it too. I was like, oh my goodness, I was so shaky, so sweaty, you know, just like all the anxiety feelings coming up. And so I can't really tell you about like the first swim or like first walking on deck and stuff, but finals was something else definitely, because everyone that's when everyone's in the stands at the same time that you're swimming.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're not like walking around doing warm down and all that stuff. So you know, we brought out the pom poms and all that, like the shakers and whatnot. So it was such a weird experience because I was like, oh, this is like actual sports.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, this is what people feel when they're playing team sports. And that was so different, so different.
Right. Oh yeah, I remember because I didn't swim in my first finals, but I remember at being at finals and just
Mhm.
the atmosphere. I was like, oh, I've never like what did what's her name from Wizard of Oz? She's like, well, I'm not in Kansas anymore. That was like me. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm not in Whitby anymore. This is
Yeah.
serious. Oh my goodness. Now, how did you do at your first Can West?
I did amazing.
Oh
Not gonna
really?
lie.
Oh.
It was, yeah. um, I did really, really well, but I was shocked. I think
Hmm.
everyone was shocked at how well I did because I mean, I trained really hard. That's one thing that, you know, I'm commended for a lot is how hard I can, you know, do a set and just like put all my effort into a set, but it never really translated into results. Um, it took me a really long time to get my cuts for a lot of things, you know, provincials, nationals, all that stuff.
Hmm.
Um, but it took a long time for that to happen, no matter how much hard work I would put in the water. So everyone kind of knew that. And they weren't expecting much, you know, oh, this little 5'2" sprinter, she's going into her first Can West. We'll just see how she does. And I killed it. I did really well. I think to this day, that was my best Can West.
Nice.
Um, and I genuinely think it was because I went in there with no expectations. You know, I was like, I don't do well under pressure, and I'm under so much pressure right now, and kind of in a weird backwards, like reverse psychology way, it relieved so much pressure for me. And I said, I don't think anyone is expecting much from me, so I'm just gonna swim, you know, how I know how to swim, and that's just like just go in there and like love what you do,
Hmm.
and that helped like immensely. So
Right. Yeah, that's important. I found when I look back at my own career or the careers of people around me, we focused so much time on times and splits and like, oh, I should be going this because I went this last year. It was like almost like a psychotic rotation or like a psychotic cycle, sorry, of like, well, I went this time in 2019 at this meet, so I should be going this time in 2021. Like I put way too much emphasis on that as opposed to how am I feeling right now? Do I feel okay? And like it's okay if I don't, but do I? It was
yeah.
always no, you should be feeling fine and you should be dropping time right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, every athlete will know that there's a certain feeling and ritual that you should have before a race or before a game. And if you don't do those or you don't feel the way that you feel, then it's out the window, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I, this is a really weird thing, but um, I had to feel tired before I raced, or else if I didn't feel tired, then I have too much energy and I go out too hard. That was just a
Interesting.
thing I had in my mind. So before a race, I would make sure I would yawn
Okay.
to
Okay.
make sure I was like, yes, you're feeling a little tired. That's okay. And, and I would do like push-ups or jumping jacks or something to get me tired. And for some reason that helped. And I would always go best times whenever I did that. But if I felt, you know, oh, those push-ups were way too easy, or I didn't yawn, I would get into my head and I would think, well, that's just, I'm expecting it not to go well. And then so it doesn't go well.
Right. Weren't you a sprinter though?
Yeah,
But aren't you
I
supposed
know.
to go out hard?
Yep. Yeah, I was known for going out hard in a 50. And I don't know why. I don't know why, or even in 100, and I would die in the last 10, 15 meters, which is unheard of.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
But I do think it was because I was so short compared to everybody else
That's fair.
that if I went up too hard and I spun my arms too fast, and my stroke rate was too high, then I would run out of steam by the end of it, compared to girls who are taking 5 less strokes than me.
Right. Did you ever feel discouraged behind the blocks in a sprint race when you're 5'2" and everyone else is taller than you?
Yes, I did until I used it as a superpower, I think. Um, some guys like beat their chest behind the block and
That was
show how
me.
big, and they're
That was
like
me.
flexing,
Yeah. Yep.
and I kind of used my shortness as like a mind game with people, like I would like overemphasize it sometimes when I knew I was racing someone that I could beat. This is so bad. But I'd go up to her and I'd like look up and I'm like, hey, like good luck, like overemphasize that I'm shorter than you.
Yeah.
But I would know, I'd be like, hey, like I feel really good today. I have 6 weeks of training under my belt. I've been killing it in practices. Like I know I can beat you in this 100. So I would play mind games with people, I think. And maybe it didn't actually affect them, but it gave me a boost of adrenaline, a little bit of an ego.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. Man, those people who played mind games, it would always affect me because people would come up and be like, I hope you have a really good race. And I'm like, why are you so nice right now? And it would just throw me off and I knew what they
Yeah.
were doing. And then they'd go back behind the worst kind of, no, I'm kidding. But, uh, now from the Can West performance that you had, did that give you the momentum you needed to get into your first U Sports?
Yeah, definitely. And it was like almost seeing people react the way they did and how surprised they were. That I think that was the biggest thing to keep me going on this. Like really, my first year, I was the best streak of best times I'd had in a really long time. And I think the biggest thing was I kind of had grown out of the environment in high school of, being top dog and everyone expecting, oh, Quincy's just going to go this best time or she's going to do really well. She's going to make that cut. And being put in an environment where people weren't expecting that from me kind of gave me a push of, oh, I need to show them that I can, or I need to break that expectation,
Right.
and show them, I'm here to do what I'm here to do. And after Can West, when people are like, wow, like we were not expecting that, or you surprised us, that really gave me a motivation boost to be like, okay, well, I'm just going to show you what else I can do, you know?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Now, did you black out going into U Sports? Was it like a similar thing, or was it like, okay, I know what I'm doing
Um,
now?
I think U Sports was definitely better. I was like, I know what I'm doing, but I did get cocky in one race, and I got I got reamed out by my coach because he was like, "What are you doing? Like, that's not the way you usually swim it. Like, what happened?" And I think I just kind of said something nonchalantly, like, "Oh, I switched it up because I wanted it to be different. I wanted it to feel different." Something like really dumb like that. And he said, "No, that's not what we've been practicing, like get out of your head, stop being cocky." And I forgot that, I'm not swimming for myself at U Sports at a national championship. I'm swimming for my team. I can't just pull shit like that where I'm, oh, I'm just going to try it because I'm feeling like it today.
Mm,
It's more like, no, you have to do what your team's expecting of you, or you have to break that, that, I don't know. I had a bit of an ego going into U Sports.
right. I mean, I don't blame you, but
Yeah.
it's also it's a huge shift from because age group is like that. Oh, I'm just gonna try this, or I'm just gonna try to make my cut. Whatever, like whatever happens to the team happens to the team. Especially on a small team,
Yeah.
you're like, well, we're not gonna win. But when
Mhm.
you get to that point on university, it's like it's bigger than you, and you got
Yes.
to realize that.
Yeah, for sure. And that's that's something that you only know how to deal with once you're in that environment,
Mm-hmm.
and Can West was great. It was a big experience. It was so much different than anything I had ever done, but USports was 10 times that. Because then everyone's riled up, everyone's pumped up for it.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Now, after U Sports, in the following years afterwards, did you ever plateau? Did you ever experience a plateau in university?
Yeah, I think immediately after that first year.
Oh.
No. I mean, I always say my first year was my biggest year and my best year because of all of those elated emotions and experiences. Everything was huge.
Mm,
Um, and so I think I was expecting that every year. I was
right.
expecting this big, like, blowout year every single year. And when I didn't get that, I was discouraged. And when you train while you're discouraged, you don't do as well. And I think that it was almost like I kind of facilitated that plateau just in terms of my expectations of myself. Um, Back to what my sports psychologist said when she said, you don't have to be great at everything. After my first year, when I was great at my first year, I was expecting to be great again and again and again. So I kind of had to dial that back down, those expectations, like pull them in. Um, but yeah, I definitely did plateau in my third and fourth year. I did 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then my last year, obviously COVID, but
Right.
um, yeah, my third and fourth year were plateaus, but I think they were needed, if it makes sense, because it was at that time when I was starting to shift my why of swimming. Why did I keep swimming? Well, it wasn't because I wanted best times all the time. It was because I loved the team, and I turned into a leader role in those years. So my why shifted from being the best in swimming to, helping others become the best and leading a team. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did that shift come easy for you? Because when I became a leader on the team or a role model on the team, I almost didn't realize that I had gotten into that role until like one of the first years came up and asked me something, and I was like, "Oh, you want my advice?" Now I don't even know what's going on half the time. So did that come easy for you, or were there growing pains in terms of the leadership role?
Um, there were definitely growing pains, but on our team, we had a leadership group. So we actually assigned girls. And I think the biggest shock to me was when I was picked to be
Mm,
on this leadership group of vets. Um, and it came as a big surprise to me because again, the imposter syndrome, I was like, I see so many other girls that would be so much better at it than me, or, I'm still growing. I don't know myself. I'm not the best version of myself. How do I lead other people in that? Um, so I think that was really hard for me, knowing that I was the leader. It was almost assigned to me. So I kind of had to be in the role that I was assigned, but kind of accepting the role, I think, was more difficult than knowing that I was in that role. And again, that just comes as me not thinking I was good enough to be a leader in the group, but it came with time.
right. Was there ever a moment where you were like, "Okay, no, I'm built for this. I'm built for the leadership role."
Um, you know, I don't think there ever was like a moment that happened. But I think I noticed it when the things I started to say, people would listen.
Mm,
And I know that sounds like kind of sad, but it was more that I would say something and a group of girls who were 3 or 4 years younger than me would all stop talking and listen to what I had to say. And I was like, why? why are you listening to me? Like, what I have to say isn't a huge deal, but it was a huge deal to those girls. And I think, yeah, moments like that was when I was like, oh, I'm fit for this because other people are saying that I am, and I have to trust other people sometimes.
yeah. Yeah, I had something similar where I forget what I was doing. I think it was a team meeting, and I said something, and everyone stopped talking, and I was like, "No, you can keep talking. I mean, you don't have to listen. It's okay."
Yeah.
It just adds that pressure. You're like, "Oh God, I should say something important now."
Yes. Yes. I'm like, it's just me. Like, I'm not saying anything like some prophecy or anything. Like,
Yeah, no, it's okay. No, but now did you? Because you did a fifth year. Was your whole fifth year in COVID?
yeah.
So did you? Wow. Yeah. Did you? So
Yeah.
did you know that you didn't know that your last meet was your last meet then?
Yes and no. So we actually, well, okay. So every year we know that we're going to take girls to USports.
Hmm.
That's just kind of like the expectation that we hold on everyone, and like the level of people that we recruit and all that stuff. So we going into my fifth year, COVID was this thing, but we were all kind of like, oh, USports will happen. It's all the way in February. It's only August or September or October or November,
Yeah.
like it's only now, and we still have 3 to 1 month away. And um, even when they announced that USports was postponed, we thought, oh, it'll come back or it'll be in March or. Um, so it got to the point where I think it was December or November, end of November, when they officially announced that USports was like done.
Hmm.
Um, and we, as fifth years, came together, or like our vets came together and were like, okay, here's the thing, we don't have a final meet. So like, what do we do, and we kind of makeshifted our final meet, which was really great. And it was special to be able to have that final swim, I think. um and I came to terms with it at the end of that swim, but I thought about it and I said that wasn't how it was supposed to go.
Right.
You know, your whole life. I mean, like as you start when you're 5, 6 years old. And so for 20 years, you're thinking, oh, how is this going to end? It's going to end at this point. I'm going to be done here. And yeah, it was supposed to be USports. It was supposed to be my last final, and whatever. I was supposed to get the gold medal. No,
Of
but
course.
yeah, exactly. That's how it all goes, right? Um, so yeah, I didn't know the official meet was a meet that I had. Um, and it was also really difficult. I'll get into that. But yeah, the I didn't know the last meet that I had was going to be my last meet, but I was really thankful and grateful that we were able to make a last meet for the graduating students.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty awesome that you got to
Mm-hmm.
do that. I God, I relate so much because growing up through high school and what so the Rio Olympics happened before our first year. And I remember
Yeah.
I was in Europe or something, but I took the time out of the day to watch the swimming because it was like the best thing. And I was always like, my last swim meet is going to be like Michael Phelps's, where he got like the gold medals and he got the silver tied with his arch rivals or whatever, or like the Katie Ledeckis of the world or the Katinka Hozus, whatever. I was like, my career is going to end like that after 4 years of uni. And it never did. And I think that's something that so many athletes have trouble grasping is that fairy tale, that storybook ending rarely happens. It happens to the Michael Phelpses of the world and the blanks and the blanks. But for every Michael Phelps, there's like a trillion non Michael Phelpses. So,
Definitely.
oh, it's tough. Now, how were you like? You just mentioned that you had difficulty grasping it. Like, what was your process of thinking after that last race? Thinking like, this is not how it was supposed to go.
Yeah. Um, so I actually had a really tough fifth year because a month before U Sports in my fourth year, I had a really bad back injury. Um,
Hey, yeah, okay.
yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
goodness, are you me?
I know. Are we actually just the same person?
I'm talking to myself through Zoom. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I had a really bad back injury, and I was told if you keep swimming, you're not ever gonna swim ever again. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I guess I have to stop swimming. But it ended up only being a month, and I'm so grateful. Like I was so lucky. I only needed to be out of the water for a month. But it was a month before USports. So obviously going into that USports, I had a really shit experience, and it was hard because my team won that year and it was really exciting.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was like, I contributed nothing to this.
Yep.
You know? So I said, next year is going to be a really great year. You know, I'm going to take care of my back. I'm going to be fully recovered. I'm going to take the summer. And then, of course, this thing happens that just shuts down the world.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, this is supposed to be my year. And for the entire year, it was that this is supposed to be my year. I'll make it. I'll make it my year in some way or another. You know, this is supposed to be it. And I tried really hard to stay in it. Like my mindset was, you know, stay in it until you're done. You're not done yet. You're not done yet. It's not over yet. But you know, when you don't have something to look forward to, it's really hard to stay training at your hardest, right? And
Yeah.
like I told you before, I'm known to put every inch of my soul into the water when I'm training, and I love to just like feel exhausted at the end and be like, I put all my energy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when I was not really able to do that, because I was like, well, why would I do that? What's my why at this point? There's no championships at the end. There's no final meet. You know, it was really hard. And then we had our final swim meet, which was just a bunch of masked people at like either end of the pool. And we had to swim like every other lane. So I was all like, I was technically swimming by myself. And you know, swimming alone and trying to be fast is the worst possible thing ever.
Yeah. Never going to happen.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, that final race was upsetting twofold. It was upsetting because I was done, but it was upsetting because I knew that's not where it was supposed to end. And, you know, I never really got back to where I was before my injury because of all of the reasons.
Yeah.
You know, so it was hard to grasp an ending that wasn't a clear cut finish. You know, there was no finish line. It was more just like tap on the shoulder, you're done now, you know?
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, I for me, I had to because I had the back injury all throughout my last year, and so my times never got better because just well, because you had the back injury, like I couldn't train, I couldn't do anything, and I was a 200 breaststroker, so that was never going to work. But I remember my last race, I didn't realize it was my last race until I went up to my coach and I was like, I feel really good right now, actually. Like I'm ready for the next meet. And she's like, yeah, there's no next meet for you. And I was like, what? Like that was my last race. What the hell? It was like a dash for cash. I was like, what the
Oh no.
I was like, what the hell? So eventually I did fight to get at least another meet in, but yeah, it's so hard to come to grasps with the fact like, hey, you're done. And it's out of the problem is like for me it was my injury, for you is your injury plus COVID. Like it's out of your control, which is even worse. It just adds it just adds some vinegar to that scab because it's like, what the hell? What the hell, life? Come on, throw me a bone.
Yeah. And it's almost like I'm supposed to be in control of my life and how things end and how things start. You know, I've been in control of my swimming career for the past 20 years. What happened now? You know? So I think it was weird because I had so much time to prepare for the ending.
Mm-hmm.
You know, COVID was looming over us for a full year before USports got canceled, or like it was like 8 months or something. So I knew it wasn't going to happen the way that it was supposed to happen. But and every day I would have to try and prepare myself to say, you know, you're almost done. So just give it your all. you're not done yet, but you will be. So like make the best of your last moments and stuff. So I actually had time to prepare, but like no one prepares you for a pandemic.
No.
No one prepares you for, like having, um, like not having the people around you actually be able to be around you. I filmed my last race over Instagram Live for my parents who were halfway across the country.
Man.
So that was a really difficult thing too. And um, yeah, yeah, that's all I have to say about that.
When did you finally come to grasp or come to terms with the fact that it was all done?
um, I'd like to say it was a month after or however long, but it comes in waves. I I noticed that like it almost felt, I mean, it feels like you're grieving the end of something, and grief never kind of goes away. There's definitely times where I wake up and I'm like, wow, I used to be able to wake up so easily and go to practice, and or I went into the pool the other day for the first time in like 4 or 5 months,
How
and
did that
I
feel?
was like, no, this is not how it's supposed to feel.
Yep.
I'm supposed to be doing really well right now. So yeah, I wish I could give you a straight answer and say that I've come to terms with it fully, but it's still a work in progress. Um, I put in a journal entry for an organization that I volunteer with, talking about the ending of my career and coming to terms with COVID. And I submitted it like literally a month after I finished my last swim.
Mm-hmm.
And in this work of art that I had given to them in writing, it sounded like someone who really understood what was happening and has come to terms with what she's experiencing, and someone who had time to reflect and move forward. But that was just stuff that I wrote on paper, and I was reading it and I was like, I don't really feel this. I don't
Right.
feel like I can move forward from this. um so yeah, it's still there. It's looming.
Right.
it's it's this thing that I have come to terms with the idea of like finding other things to do to distract myself, or um you know uh being like, okay, this is the next chapter of my life. But there's definitely times where I still look back and I say, I didn't like the way that happened, and I'm not really over that.
Yep. Yeah, we oh man, I went to see some friends from the team who I haven't seen in 2 years, and I didn't realize it had been 2 years until I saw them again. I was like, man, the last 2 years have been a blur. But I saw them because they were on the team, and we started talking about how like our last swim meets and everything, because I don't think any of us had a favorable ending. And I remember talking about mine, and I was like, I sound really, because we were drinking, and I was like, I sound really salty right now because I'm like,
Yeah.
no, I didn't get it the way I wanted. I'm like, man, that was like 3 years ago. It
Yeah.
sticks with you. It really does.
Hmm. Especially when it's such a big part of your life.
Yeah.
Swimming was my identity. I said, hi, my name's Quincy, I'm a swimmer.
Hmm.
And now I'm like, hi, my name's Quincy, I used to swim.
That's what I say.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, I'll be on Instagram Live, and they're like, "Tell us about yourself." I'm like, "I'm an ex-varsity swimmer." And they're like, "That's
Yeah.
it?" Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Um.
can't even say I went to the Olympics.
No.
Like, so yeah, it's a really hard thing to move from, because it's like you've taken a part of yourself and you're hanging it up, you're retiring that part of yourself. And it's almost like I walk by it every day. I have friends who are still swimmers. I help out with the swim team still. My career is in sport.
Right.
Like I can't get away from it. But I think part of it, I love it so much, I don't want to be away from it. I don't want to isolate myself from that life. But at the same time, it's definitely something that's a little bittersweet on the tongue to
Right.
talk about, to be around.
Yeah, absolutely. Now
Mm.
for athletes who, because that's the shitty thing about this pandemic for athletes, right? Is like the last 2 years, most teams have been canceled or sports have been
Yeah.
taken away. What would you want to like? How would you personally, if you were in a room with athletes who maybe they've got a couple years left of university, or they're just going into university, but they have no motivation for anything because it's like, well, nothing's like, how do I know that there's not going to be another lockdown? Like, what kind of motivation would you give them?
I mean, the motivation I'd give them is the same that I was given in my first year is remember why you're doing it,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and maybe that why is going to change every single day, you know. Some people's why is I want to make this cut or I want to get a championship, but oh, COVID, you know, maybe your championship's not going to happen. So find a different why, find a why every single day. My why was I get to see my teammates every single day. I get to do something that makes my body feel good and I know I can do. Um, and, you know, celebrate the things you are able to do instead of the things that might not happen, you know. And it's hard to navigate because no one's been through a pandemic before.
Right.
I mean, we've been through 1 year, but you know, it changes every single year. And now we're kind of in this instability phase where it's where we don't know where it's going to go.
Mm-hmm.
No one knows where it's going to go. So I think to the athletes who are going through that right now, hold on to what you know, and your why should be something that you can control. I mean, it's hard, but yeah, I think that's the biggest thing.
Right. I love that. Now I have one last question for you, Quincy. I completely forgot about asking about mental health because I just love swimming so much. But we're already near the end of it. My last question for you, if knowing what you know now and experiencing your whole swim career and, you know, going through the mental health journey that you've experienced, if you were to be in a room with first year Quincy, what's one thing that you would tell her?
Don't get bangs. No, I'm kidding. That was a really bad.
Wait, when was that?
decision.
First year, second year?
At the end of my first year, I got bangs. And let me tell you, the bangs, they seemed like a really great idea at the time until they grow out, you know? It's just a really bad idea. No,
Right.
okay, but seriously though, I think, man, what would I tell first year Quincy? A lot of things, but I think the biggest thing would be try to be as present as possible. Try to look around you every day and note the things that are making your life awesome and be grateful for that. And you know, there's ups and downs every day of your life, but if you can find the little moments that make you truly happy, then those are the things that tell you, you know, that'll motivate me to go to the next day and to go to the next day. And when you're at a really big high of emotions, embrace that. And when you're in a low, again, try and find those little pieces of happiness in your life. So, yeah.
Awesome. And with that, we are done. Quincy, where can my listeners find you? When's the podcast coming back?
Okay. So, you know, in the bio, it says every 3 weeks ish. And I really took that to heart, the ish part. I am currently trying my best to like build a bunch of episodes right now to release all at once. Cause I think in the midst of the pandemic, I was like, I can do everything, which I can't do everything greatly. So I'm trying my best there. But yeah, the podcast will come out in the next couple months or so. I'd say summer. In the summer, I think is when it'll come back on. But yeah. Oh, I can't hear you. Hold on. Try again.
There we go.
There we go. Yeah.
My mic does that. It like randomly mutes itself. I don't know why. But
right.
yeah, in like 3 months ish.
Yes, ish. Ish is a great word.
Oh man. Now where can they find you to keep up to date with Yeah No For Sure podcast? Or just if they want to learn more about you or anything.
Yeah, it's called Yeah No For Sure podcast on Instagram, I think. See, I don't even... I'm doing really great with this. No, okay, but you can find me at q.quintessential. So it's quintessential with a dot after the Q on Instagram. I actually just recently opened up an Etsy account for digital prints, which I'm really excited about. And on there, I'm going to be doing like affirmation prints for your wall and mental health, like little stuff. So go on there, and that'll be on my Instagram as well, I think. So, Harry, you're really inspiring me to update my social media life.
Good, I'm glad.
Because I've clearly have not done that in a very long time. So.
Oh man, that's all good.
Yeah. Hopefully when you release this, I can have everything all up and going. So.
Yeah, no, I'll wait until you do, and then I'll put
Okay.
it up. No, I'm kidding. But I'll put all those links down below. Quincy, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a blast.
Thanks for having me. It's great.
To all my listeners, I will see you guys next time.